His mantra is don't design a living, design a life. And this isn't coming from an individual reflecting back upon years of experience and sharing advice. This is coming from 22-year-old Jordan Paris, who has been designing a life that most people would envy. And he's here today to share his story and strategies for how you can do this as well. This is an episode that you'll want to share far and wide because Jordan's story could be your story or someone else's. It could be the motivation and advice that someone needs to begin that step one, to have the resource they need, to have the motivation they need to begin designing their life. So we'd love for you to tag us in your stories, let us know what you think, and more than that, let us know how we can help. How do you navigate change? It's a question we think about often, and one that today's world expects us to be comfortable with. The challenge, however, is where do you begin? And how do you develop the mindset and skill set to be successful? Welcome, everyone, to the Sprint to Success with Design Thinking podcast. I'm your host, Saba Kidwai. Join me each week as I share the stories and strategies from the world's leading researchers and practitioners about why they believe the answer lies in practicing design thinking. Is college worth it? Have you ever thought about that? Or is that something that you're currently debating and thinking, am I doing the right thing? Have I made the right choice? For so many people, this is such a major topic of discussion, not just amongst young people, but really amongst families as well. Student loan debt has risen from $260 billion in 2004 to $1.4 trillion in 2017. It's not just families and students who are discussing this. Earlier this year, Paul Tao released a book called The Years That Matter Most: How College Makes or Breaks Us. And in this book, he shares the journey of a pretty diverse group of students who are going through the high school to college experience transition and also follows them all the way through their journey. He also really outlines and highlights some of the systematic challenges that exist, along with some potential solutions. However, Jordan and I are here today to share that you don't have to, and really you should not be waiting for the system to change. I mean, you absolutely could, and we should all be working towards that. But if you begin waiting, you're probably going to be waiting a very long time. So we're really excited to be here today to share our stories about how you can take advantage of what today's world offers using the social media platforms and tools that we have to design the life that you want to live, not the one that's been outlined for you, and definitely not the one that you think you have to design. So my undergraduate and graduate experience were back in 2000, way before the rise of social media platforms. Currently, I'm a doctoral student at the University of Southern California, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that the opportunities today are just so vast, yet so underutilized. And here's really the greatest lesson that I've learned. You have to be your own advocate for what you need, for what you want, for how you're going to get it, and how, more importantly, you're going to take advantage of the experiences during your college years. You have to do sort of what Gary Vaynerchuk says, be able to reverse engineer your academic career to design the life and the professional career that you want to live. So, for example, as I was writing my dissertation, hundreds of pages in, I began to realize very few people were actually going to read the paper in its entirety. So I decided to create this podcast that you're listening to bring to life the ideas that I was writing about. Was it an assignment for me? No. Do I need it to be an assignment? No. Can I take the initiative to design the experience that meets my needs and my goals? Absolutely yes. To talk about how to do this in more detail, I want you to meet Jordan Paris. So Jordan is a 22-year-old author, entrepreneur, podcaster. He's been featured in Forbes, Men's Health, NASDAQ, and so many other publications. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of cultivating a growth mindset. And Jordan really lives this practice because he is the host of Growth Mindset University, ranking in the top 10 in a number of competitive categories, not just in the United States, but worldwide. Some of Jordan's guests include James Altucher, Grant Cardone, Mark Mason, Naveen Jain, and Dan Locke. And later this year, he's getting ready to give his first TED Talk. And I say first because I imagine there are going to be many more TED Talks in Jordan's future. How did Jordan create a top-ranking podcast with some of the most coveted guests as a college student and design a life full of passion and purpose? He's here to share that and more with us. And to help you take action on what he shares, you can download his latest book, The Podcast Playbook, the winning game plan to build an audience and make money as a podcaster. Let's welcome Jordan to the show. Hello, Jordan, and I am so excited to have you on today's episode of Sprint to Success. Everybody actually knows that, starting podcasting and starting the show is a new experience for me. And one of the things that one of our first guests said, Duncan Wardle, was this idea that we are going through such a generational shift right now, where people who are older really need to be learning from people who are younger. And you actually found you when I was researching podcasts and searching out good ones, who's doing well in this space. And yours is one of the ones that I actually came across. And so, Jordan, why don't you start off just by telling us how old you are?
I'm 22 and a half years old.
22 and a half years old. And I'm so excited for really particular people in my audience to be able to hear your story. And what I would love to do is to kind of just start off by sharing a quote from Carol Dweck that I really like. And one of my favorite ones from her is this idea that becoming is better than being. And a lot of people talk about the idea of a growth mindset, but you just really epitomize what it means to just live it to the fullest. So tell me, Jordan, a few things that you're proud that you're becoming as you embrace this journey.
Yeah, sure. An adventurer, an observer of human nature, a teacher, someone who is a little bit less selfish and egotistical as they previously were. By realizing more of what matters, what brings me joy, and learning that through my adventures and my different experiences. But I think that's a vague painting of the answer.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fantastic. And I think, having that self-awareness is something that a lot of people talk about as being important, right? As you're growing up, how do you develop those interests? How do you find that joy? Really comes from being self-aware. And so understanding and knowing what you're proud of, I think, is so important. Why don't you maybe go ahead and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you came to learn those things about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I knew early on I didn't want to work for anyone. I got out of this serving job, when I was 18, and I said never again. I won't work for anyone ever again. And I, it was this journey of establishing an income for myself. I was a personal trainer for several years, and that was the first thing I did. Learned in basically an apprenticeship model. Worked for someone for free for a little bit in the space that I really admire, and then went and replicated that myself. Had in-home clients, and I thought that's what it was going to be. Yeah, that's what I wanted to do, and there was nothing wrong with it. But I realized there's a little bit more here. I'm trading time for money. I don't really want to. I don't know. It's just not scalable. And then my income's tied to a location. I was there's a better way to do this. And my outlet even wasn't health and fitness anymore. It's still I'm wearing an Under Armour shirt. I'm wearing a gym outfit right now. It's still I still exercise 4 days per week and, eat healthier than I ever have. But, as far as teaching health and fitness and it's just, and talking about it, it's not really it's just not what I like to talk about anymore. And it hasn't been for a while. So my career evolved, and I started this podcast, wrote this book, and the podcast, without really intending on it becoming anything, it did become something. And so I got this cool podcast in my hands, and my career evolves from there. And people are asking me for my expertise in podcasting all the time. And so what do I do from there? You know, in early 2019, I start, you know, building some momentum to create this marketing and production agency for podcasters. And so now that's what I do. And I essentially help other podcasters all day. And that's what I love to do. And that's where my career is at right now. And yeah.
That's really interesting. So you've gone from, like, you know, you talked about your time being a server, you've gone from health and fitness, and now you've gone to, you know, into trying out a podcast, and you've gone all the way now into thinking about like marketing and helping other people scale theirs. Tell me a little bit maybe about like the moment like in college where you were like, this is what I wanted to try. Like, what was happening? Maybe what were you experiencing that made you say, I want to get up and start a podcast?
No, I have no idea. Like I just did it. It was just a split-second decision. There really wasn't much thought process there. I'm just really glad that whatever was on my mind, like whatever made this come up in my head, like whatever it was, I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad that I acted upon it without thinking too much about it. I usually think about things way too much, and then I'm plagued by inaction. But this was not one of those things, and I'm really glad.
Yeah. Was there something about the medium maybe that made you gravitate to that? Like, were you experimenting with other mediums? Was it something about
No,
that?
I mean, I have no idea. You know, I wasn't a particularly good speaker. I was shy. And there was not much in my previous body of work that said that, you know, this indicated this could be something good. I mean, I tried blogging was my thing. That used to be my thing. And I just wasn't getting traction there. And, blogging was like, I was a decade late. That's what happened.
Yeah.
You know, if I wanted to make it, if I wanted to have a better chance of making it in blogging, I would have had to start it when I was like 11.
Right. Okay.
You know? So, yeah, nothing really about the medium that attracted me to podcasting. It just seemed to be a logical thing to do. It seemed hot-ish. Now it's even hotter.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your podcast. Tell us about the name, how you chose the name, why it was important to you, and what your goals are with the podcast. Like, who's your audience, and what are some of the things that you're trying to bring value to for people?
Yeah, so it's called Growth Mindset University, as you know, of course. And I don't really know where the name came from. I just remember like December 2017, like, you know, visiting family in Pennsylvania and thinking, like, it popped in my head for the first time, and I just so vaguely remember it, and I didn't write it down or anything, but I just made a mental note and kept it in my head, and then early March of 2018, I put together this free little course that I'm so embarrassed about on like Thinkific or something, and I called it Growth Mindset University, and then I started writing this book called Growth Mindset University in the same month, and then the following month in April of 2018, I started this podcast, Growth Mindset University. The name is something that I've actually always been proud of. Like, I think, I mean, there's some parts of what I do that just suck, but there's some parts that are really good, and that, like, I know I just nailed. And the name, I just nailed it. Like, I think it's a really good name. It's a really unique name, and I wouldn't change it. You know, I'm so glad it's not called like the Jordan Paris Show. That'd be stupid. No one would listen to that. But yeah, really, I'm proud of that. And so Growth Mindset University, it is all about learning the lessons that we should have learned in school but didn't, and you know, learning from the people that we should be learning from. People like you know, James Altucher, Grant Cardone, Mark Manson. You know, it would make sense to learn writing and from Mark Manson, who's sold tens of millions of copies of books. So it just people that it makes sense learning from. You know, people that have been there and done that. Not people that that have no experience. But anyway, yeah, that's what it's all about, and it's been great. It's been a great journey.
That's a fantastic. So there's a few pieces in there I want to pull apart. So the first one is you talk about this idea that we're learning things that we didn't get to learn in school, right?
Yeah.
So I want to learn just a little bit more about sort of your like high school to college transition, and what are some of the things that you were experiencing and feeling that you weren't getting from school that you knew were valuable, that you went and sought out and kind of created on your own and then shared?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I start realizing this like as I'm a personal trainer towards the end of freshman year of college, and I'm in these gen ed classes, and I remember thinking, I said to my friend, I remember the exact moment. I remember like the road we were on. And I remember being in my old car, and I said, I think if I were to drop out, I wasn't too sure about it. I think if I were to drop out, I think I'd be just fine. And my friend goes, yeah, you know what? You might even be right. and I'm like, and that was like this seed of like questioning, because I'm a questioner. I interviewed Gretchen Rubin, and one of the four types of people that she outlines in the four tendencies. I'm a questioner of everything, of authority, of people, of institution, through and through. I'm a questioner, so that's when I planted the seed of like beginning this questioning process of school and what am I really getting out of it? Like, what's it leading me to? And I realized it's only leading me to a job. Robert Kiyosaki would say, school, it produces ease. That's all it produces: ease, employees. And if that's what you want to be, then great. Then I think you should enroll in a good university for hopefully a reasonable price. That's part of the problem in America, and not in Israel. Actually, I just came from Israel, and school is very. I'm talking with the Israelis there. I got several ongoing conversations about education in college in Israel, and this is not a problem. Like massive student loan debt, not a problem. The tuition, very reasonable. I think it was 6,000 shekels. Someone told me, which like $2,000, and I guess this is per year. I have no idea. I have to have more conversation about this, but I hope that. What was the exact question again? I want to make sure I stay on track here.
Yeah, no, I wanted to know what your experiences were in like college that kind of led you to feel like, wow, I'm not getting what I need. Like, what are the things you felt you weren't getting?
So realizing that school produces E's and I didn't want to be an E, where am I going to learn the stuff that, let's say, okay, so the other E, it doesn't include the other E, entrepreneurs, which school doesn't really, produce, but, where am I going to learn this stuff? And I've got this big library around me, and I've always been a big reader, and that's where, every part of who I am today, everything you see me talking about online, every accomplishment that I've ever had, it's because of the collective wisdom of all of these people who wrote these amazing books. I love learning negotiation. I love learning all things human nature. That's my favorite thing to learn about. I eat it up. This has been my education, and yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm producing like another, like my podcast is another medium to, provide this education, for the progressive new age of business and life that we find ourselves in 2020, that school really isn't preparing us for, because the material and syllabi in these universities are decades outdated. It's actually quite comical. So Growth Mindset University is here to play a very small role in solving that problem.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important because, one of my biggest things is, just this idea of design thinking and really this idea of empathy. And one of actually my driving motivations for going back to school, which we'll talk about in a moment, was this idea of like, I spent so much time talking about what school should be, but what is it like to actually be a student today? And I don't think enough times we really get out there and ask students, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What is your experience like? So yeah, the syllabuses are old and all that kind of stuff, but what are the things that you were going in, you talk about, you love questioning, so you're definitely incredibly curious. You love reading, you clearly love learning. So what was it about school that you didn't enjoy, or that you weren't like, what was it about school you didn't enjoy that you felt like, hey, I need something else because I'm not getting what I need?
Well, it was maddening, frustrating. Like, why am I here? What am I doing here? Like, what is this? What is this for? I'm like, this doesn't relate to the real world, quote unquote, at all. And this is the attitudes of so many people around me. Like, you should just, the morale of my peers, about, like, their attitudes towards school are just terrible. Like, they feel very similarly to me. Like, this is terrible. Like, what? I can't even believe I'm here. I cannot believe that I am here. Like, this is just a tragic waste of time. It's really terrible. So
yeah, no,
and this is why I'm giving the TED Talk on education in March. I'm really excited to deliver a great message there and start a movement.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, so you're off on this journey and, your peers feel a lot of the same way. Do you see your peers going off and starting their own sort of like initiatives and paths and kind of doing some of the same things you're doing? Or would you say that you're maybe a little bit more unique in that space?
Yeah, I don't really see this too much. It's unfortunate. A lot of my, peers, they go into they go to college aimlessly. They pick a major aimlessly, and they take out student loans, tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, student loans aimlessly. And you ask them, what do you want to do? And everyone goes, I don't know. Like, aimlessness is a vice, and it's going to come back to hurt you. And in this case, it's extremely financially irresponsible. And so I just find people taking the default path and becoming ease.
Yeah. And I think, and me and you talked about this in our very first conversation, like, is college worth it? Right? Like, should you be there? Should you not? Why don't you actually, before we talk about it a little bit, why don't you tell us a little bit about your TED Talk and a little bit about your thoughts around that?
Sure. I mean, basis of it here is that 42.1 million Americans owe an average of $38,877 in student loan debt, which amounts to about $1.65 trillion in student loan debt in the United States. And this is a big problem. It's setting people back decades, if not an entire lifetime. People my age are and a little older, this generation's buying homes less often, having children less often, even though they want to just as much as the previous generation. And in part, it's because they're saddled with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. We're coming on up to around 2030, this big shortage of medical practitioners, of doctors. Because why? Because the average doctor comes out owing in excess of $200,000 in student loan debt. I know a client of mine with a podcast, he owed $307,000 in student loan debt. He very fortunately paid it off. He was he did really well with it, but people are intimidated by these gargantuan amounts of student loan debt, and it's causing a lot of problems. And that's what my talk is about. And I'm excited.
Yeah,
it's gonna be the highlight of my 2020, probably.
I imagine it definitely will be. So, like, maybe let's talk about that a little bit, because me and you are both currently in college, right? Like, so we're talking here about like, how we're not getting the skills that we need and like school is this and this. Yep. Here we are, both individuals in that space.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought it might be nice for us to both be able to share our why and our purpose
Sure.
about why we actually are there and what we feel like we're getting. And I want to really kind of have you go into this idea of that aimlessness, because I like, in being back there, because so many people ask me this question, like, is college worth it? Like, what should I be doing in college? And it just, I feel so hypocritical to tell somebody else that, no, it's not a good idea, or to like challenge the idea when here I am in a doctoral program. So I didn't just go to college, like I've gone all the way through. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about like, why you stayed and what you feel like the value could be and isn't, if depending on
there's
what your
no
path is.
value. For me, there's absolutely zero value. But why am I here? It's a good question worth answering that I was just about to bring up as well. I'm here because, number one, I have 4 months left. I have 15 weeks left as of like today. And well, my tuition was paid for by my father. He saved for all 3 kids at tuition. And so tuition was paid for. So if I were to drop out, which I've tried many times, I would have to pay back every dollar of tuition. I don't really want to owe $90,000. I'd rather spend it on, like I just bought this sweet new ride out there. I'd rather invest in property. Like I don't want to be one of those 42.1 million Americans that owes several tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt. And it doesn't mean, just because my tuition was paid for, it doesn't mean that I can't be an advocate for those 42.1 million Americans. And it doesn't change those numbers. It doesn't change the fact that 42.1 million Americans owe an average of $38,877. It doesn't change that fact. They're still there. These are real people. And I guarantee that every day on the streets, you're walking. I guarantee you. I mean, if you had student loan debt, if people were walking around with student loan debt like taped to their foreheads, you'd be really shocked.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree with you more. And, being in university more and more, so I definitely have a little bit of a different take. So like, I actually really enjoyed my entire university experience. I actually hated my middle and high school experience. So much so I took a college exit exam at 16 and I said, peace out. Like I was absolutely done. Yep. And I will never forget that moment.
Too.
Oh my gosh, I was sitting in this like AP, IB, US history class, and this guy was just like standing at a podium reading out of a textbook, and I was just, kind of like just what you were experiencing. It's like, why am I sitting here? And so I found out about this exam, and I found out I could go to college where I could make my own schedule and do all these things. And so I actually really enjoyed my undergraduate experience. But one of the things that I think allowed me to enjoy it was having a sense of curiosity. I think there's a really big difference between, like you said, just going through the motions and just, showing up because you think you're just going to graduate and supposedly get a job, right? Which doesn't happen for many people. And even if it does, like I got a job right out of college, but then 3 months later is the recession. So then, the whole world changes, right? So but I had this curiosity, and I always kind of pursued what I was interested in that just ultimately led me down these different pathways. And even again, now being back in school during such a different time, right? With like social media platforms and just all these other things that we have available. One of the things I've really found is if you don't have a purpose, I think you are throwing your money away. Like one of the worst pieces of advice, and I have yet to speak up about this in class, like I'm going to one day, but I'm on a panel actually for a group of students next week. And when they talk about dissertations, one of the first pieces of advice they give you is a good dissertation is a done dissertation. And I get it. They're trying to get you to like not like, think that this is going to be your masterpiece of work. They're trying to get you to understand this is your first step. But I just think like, wow, are we really telling people to pay $100,000+ just to get something done? Like, that's your advice? Like, get it done? Like, no, like there needs to be a journey. There needs to be a pathway. And so, for me, the outlet was a podcast. No one's going to sit there and read what I've just done, right? That's going to ultimately go to my professor and then 150 pages, 3 years of work down the drain. So it's like, okay, well, how am I going to showcase this? What do I want to do with it? How can I take that research and expand upon it? So I really went in with a very, very, very specific purpose about what I wanted to get out of the experience. And so I wanted to do it. Yeah. And so that's that. I mean, that to me is like one element of like, if you're going to consider this, it's not just like a yes or a no, it's worth it. Is it not worth it? It's what is your purpose? How are you going to monetize? How are you going to make that money back? Right? Like, can you even make that money back? And so I want to bring back.
Yeah. Evaluating the
Yeah.
right. Comparing the tuition with what you can make, what your salary raise is going to be if you get, exactly. That's one of the takeaways of my talk. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not even right about salary. Like I think about someone like you, right? Like compared to your other peers, like let's say you did have $90,000 of student loan debt. I have no doubt you'd be able to pay it back. Not because
Yeah.
of getting a job, but because you would take the initiative to find these different streams of income to be able to create what it is that you want to go after. And so I think like, and that's why I like the idea of your podcast because and hopefully what people will get from mine as well, and hearing from people like you is it's not about like the wealth or the money or like, I think it would be easy for people to write off people as saying like, well, if your dad paid for this, well, then everything's just being set up for you. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. And so I think I want to bring it back to one thing that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's on your website as well, because it's been a unanimous theme across the podcast, and that is the idea of curiosity. And so you talk a lot about the idea of, asking questions and you're very curious. And I kind of just wanted you to talk a little bit about how your curiosity perhaps played a role in where you are today.
Oh, well, yeah, I do this in real life, this interview thing, like, and I have to like hold myself back in interviews like this where I'm being interviewed. Like I sometimes like ask too many questions of the interviewer, which, which can like, I don't know. I kind of like feel bad-ish in a way because like, I don't know. I don't want to like distract. I mean, you invited me on the show for a reason, but yeah, I'm just, again, a questioner. I was like, I still, still ask my mom like endless questions as if she's like this all knowing source. And, I mean, she knows a lot of things, but, just like endless questions. And I don't know. I think it's good for conversation too, as a recovering awkward person. This questioning and being curious is definitely a good for my conversations. And I don't know. That's just who I am. Curious and good listener. And that's me.
That is so fantastic. So I love the idea that you brought that up about your mom because, it's funny. One of the things we always talk about, right, is like, oh, young kids always asking why. And, kids don't ever stop at the first why, right? It's like one of the things as adults we kind of have to relearn is that confidence to ask questions because, like you're kind of feeling like we almost feel like asking questions is a bad thing when really questions are like the most beautiful thing to do because they just open up these new avenues and these new pathways for different ideas and thoughts. But you've mentioned now both your mom and your dad. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about perhaps the role that they've played in who you've become and just, that dynamic between the things that you're doing and maybe the pathways they pursued, which were probably a little bit more traditional, and just what that dynamic looks like?
Yeah, sure. Well, who I am as a person, and this is theory, but I am a questioner. This is why I'm a questioner. I had, very permissive parents, like just allowed to do things, very accepting, very supportive. And, that's a good thing, but it's also like there's downsides to permissive parents, like, having disdain for authority later on in life, which I absolutely have times 100. I have this inherent disdain for like all authority that I have to like constantly keep in check. And that's led me to become this questioner of all forms of authority. So yeah, I think that's how that has manifested itself. As far as career path, like I have this unconditional love and support from my parents always. It was in my first book. I wrote in the inscription here, I wrote, "To my parents, thank you for giving me the unconditional love and support that has enabled me to chase my dreams. I love you." And that's been really important to me because, I even had a friend yesterday. I was on the phone catching up, talking about my trip to Israel. She wanted to hear about it, and I was like, yeah, I might want to. I think within the year I'll go live in Israel and be a volunteer as an English teacher there, and which is a whole nother conversation. But and she's like, what do your parents think of that? And what are they okay with that? And I'm like, number one, I don't care. Like, even if they weren't okay with it, like, like, this is my life. This is my money. This is this is me. I don't really give a damn about the permission or approval of my parents. Nonetheless, I get it no matter what I do. It's like, I joke sometimes, if I were to like, say like, oh, I'm experimenting with heroin as a as a health food. They'd be like, oh yeah, good, Jordan, good. So yeah, I think that's how my parents have shaped me a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's nice. And I think it's important that parental support and just that being able to like try new things, especially in, today's age of like, what they call like this helicopter parenting where we're trying to like mold children to being a certain way and all that kind of stuff, that I think sometimes that can be, having parents that are that open-ended and just saying like, hey, go do what you want to do and develop that self-awareness is, really important. And I talk about my dad a lot often as well, in that I think just watching him as an entrepreneur, I think just subconsciously all the things that I took in, we moved 3 times. So, when I got a job offer to get up and move, I didn't even think twice. People are just like, wow, like you're a real risk taker. Like, wow, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I guess I was. Like, I just didn't really think about it. Like, it just seemed so normal that you would, go pursue an opportunity in a new country, go do these things. And so I think definitely having those experiences helps you do that. What might your advice be to people who perhaps don't have situations like that, or especially people that are maybe listening to you right now, are maybe in college and thinking, wow, that's like super inspirational. I wonder if I could do that too.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that the person that I was on the phone with, unfortunately, everyone says they have the best parents, but like I see, and this person does not have the best parents. Like, really, really doesn't. Like, you got to do, and this is so many people. Like, you have to do what they want you to do, and or they'll like shut you out. And it's really a shame. And you have to keep in mind that just because someone loves you doesn't mean they know what's best for you. And you have to say screw it. And it's easy for me to say because I didn't have to do this with my parents. But if they were resistant to what I want to do with my career, and wanted me to just get a safe and secure job, which, by the way, the safety and security of a corporate job is quite the illusion. It's quite the opposite. I'd very much rather be in control. It's much safer and more secure, contrary to popular opinion. I would, if they were resistant to that, I'd say get out of my life. Depending on how resistant they are. But if I had to, I'd say get out. I don't care. Again, easy for me to say, but that's what I would do.
For people that maybe are just in school and just thinking and confused about what their pathway is, what their purpose is, what advice might you give to them?
Yeah, well, what I wouldn't do is, if I have no idea what I want to do, like, the stupidest thing you could do is like go into college undeclared. Like, the stupidest, like, hands down. Like, you're just saying like, okay, I'm going to burn tens of thousands of dollars until I figure out what I want to do. and you might even just figure out that college is not even for you, and you just burn tens of thousands of dollars. You might figure out that what you want to do has no such requirement of a college certification, and you just burn tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I would really think long and hard, and not just think, but like put things down on paper. What is it what is it that I want to do with my life? Like, let's begin with the end in mind here, right? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What is it that is going to make me the happiest? Or at least let's take it doesn't need to be an end all be all, but let's take a good assessment of this. And let's figure out, okay, what do I need to get there? Again, we're reverse engineering this. Is it a college education? If yes, go to college. If no, don't go. But if yes, then okay, what's the college major that I'm going to need to get this? And over the course of earning the degree in this major in this field of study, what am I going to be spending in total? And let's compare that. What am I going to owe? Like, how am I going to? Are my parents paying for that? Is that an agreement, or am I paying for this? How much am I going to be able to pay for a year? How much am I going to take out in student loans? And when I get out, how much am I going to owe? And let me compare that. Okay, I thought about what I want to do with my life, and what am I going to be earning per year in my 20s, 30s, 40s? How long is it going to take me to pay off this student loan debt? Like, let's be financially responsible here. Put all this down on paper, figure it out, do some critical thinking, and then go from there after we've reverse engineered it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember who said this, but I think the funniest quote I ever heard was, we go straight from, having to like raise our hand and ask like if we can go to the bathroom as seniors in high school to having to make these really big financial decisions literally the same year, like a few months later.
Good point. I want to hit on that too, because, we're asking 18-year-olds to take tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of student student loans. And, these people, their brains are almost a decade away from being fully developed. Like these are in a sense financially or mentally incapable people. That we're tasking with making these gigantic decisions. Like, but we tell them, you want to take out student loans, take out $25,000. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. It'll all be okay. And then they're forced later, a decade later or less, to face the unfortunate reality that I owe a lot of money, and I don't know if it was worth it. I kind of regret it. Like, this sucks because we're asking people, almost mentally ill people, to make these decisions. Like, I think it's almost criminal. And like, no questions asked though when you go to get these loans. No questions asked. Yeah. And you can't. They're never going to be forgiven. You can't declare bankruptcy on them. So it's backed by they're backed by the government, and so colleges know this, and so they hike up the cost of tuition, which has gone up over 1,100% over the past since 1978. Meanwhile, food has gone up 400%, and cost of healthcare, which bankrupts many people, has only gone up 600-something%, like 603, I forget. So it smells a little fishy, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's one of the things that I really hope people learn from you. And, I want to have you share your new book that just came out today as well, because I think there are so many people that would like to do some of these things, that want to do these things, that have ideas. I see that kind of in people, but, it's kind of just being drained out of them. And so it's like, you've got to find a way to revive that. And so if there's one thing I really hope that people take away from this conversation or this episode is that, it's not as scary to try something new as it may seem or as it may feel. It's not as overwhelming. It's not as anything. I just really liked your raw, honest answer. And, when you ask somebody, why did you start something? I feel like people always have these fancy visions for something, but to just say like, well, I don't know. I just thought I'd try it. Like, I have no clue. I just did it. And I think that that in and of itself is an answer, because that was your curiosity, and that was like a drive within you to want to do something, and you just listened to it. Right? So it's not always sometimes about listening to other people. It's like, how do we listen to ourselves and that voice when we have that like idea or that thought that just crosses our mind, and we just go for it. So if there's one thing I hope that people take away from this episode, it's that, just, I know it sounds so cliche, but just go for it. Like,
well, look, sometimes it is going to be very uncomfortable, and it's going to suck. but you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think about this in terms of like, taking the initiative to strike up conversations with people and make friends, like, just sucks. Again, as a recovering awkward person, like it sucks and it's uncomfortable, but you have to do it and it works.
Yeah, no, awesome. And I was about to like wrap up, but I want you to share a little bit about your new book that came out, because I think it could be a great resource for people who are thinking about starting or just want to try something.
Sure. Yeah, it's called The Podcast Playbook. It's once again a #1 new release on Amazon. It was a #1 new release for several weeks back in November, December, but here we are recording this in January. It's release day, and it's a #1 new release again, so that's good.
No, it's
think
exciting.
that was going to happen.
Do you have it with you?
I thought the best days of the book had come and gone, even on pre-order. It hadn't even come out, but they're still to come. But subtitle: The Winning Game Plan to Build an Audience and Make Money as a Podcaster. And in there I go over how to build a business around your podcast, how to generate an income from your podcast without any ad revenue. And I crunch the numbers. I go over all that, and it's in this book that you can read in 59 minutes, 112 pages in paperback format on Amazon or yourpodcastplaybook.com. And clear, concise, quick. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll make sure I link that and all the other amazing resources that you have in the show notes. I wanted to wrap up by asking you, is there anything that, you would like to share that I have not asked or that we didn't get to touch on?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just got back from this trip from Israel, and it was like the trip, the adventure of a lifetime.
Was it your first time?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I met these unbelievable people, Israelis and Americans alike, that I plan on spending a lot of time with in the future. I had the experiences of a lifetime, and I posted on LinkedIn one time over those 10 days, and my screen time on my phone was more than cut in half, and I didn't bring my computer, which eliminates another 6 hours of screen time per day. And then of course I didn't watch a second of TV, because why would you in Israel? And so it was like really one of the most refreshing experiences, and had me rethinking like what matters in my life, and rethinking that whatever that end in mind is, what do I want to, who do I want to be, what do I want to do, because those were some really happy days. It was a lot of fun, and it took it took a new adventure, a new experience, and branching out to realize these things. But I don't know. I just wanted to bring up my Israel trip because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And,
no, I really love that, because I think, again, it just really is such a good example of just your curiosity and just, again, your self-awareness. Like, and I think so many times, even, lots of people who go on trips and we travel, but it's like, we go on it, it's almost like we're checking off a box. It's like if something makes you really happy, do you pause in that moment to say like, wow, this is something that's making me really happy. How do I make this more of a bigger part of my life, instead of just, next year when I have my 2 weeks, like, maybe I'll do it again, if that's, and I think that goes back to that, if you're thinking about your purpose and what you want to do, being self-aware and being reflective in those moments where you are really happy, I think is so important to note down.
Yeah. Traveling, just to check off the boxes you mentioned, like, people do it just to post on Instagram. People fly across the world just to like show people like, here I am, and they're buried in technology the whole time they're there. I don't know. I could really see myself falling off the map in terms of the internet, like in some time in my life, and just really like living the way we were meant to live, pre-technology.
That is so interesting, because I was actually a little bit curious about your thoughts about like social media and just the role that it's played in allowing you to perhaps develop the kind of network that you have, and, maybe talking even a little bit about some of the people that you interview on your podcast and how you kind of like what role has that played in that?
Well, social media? Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's everything. But at the same time, like, I mean, because if you read between the lines here, like, I checked my email like 2 or 3 times while I was away, and I see like payments coming through. So like I can still make money without social media. So like 95% of the time that I'm spending on social media is like a waste of time. 5% is like absolutely necessary. I think definitely only, I think. But yeah, I think we could just be a lot more efficient on social media, and it's definitely not it's not meaningful. There's no argument there. Like the time that you spend on social media, like it's not meaningful. You're not creating memories, not creating these novel experiences. Like we know what social media is, and we know how it makes us feel when we spend multiple hours per day on it. And it's almost like spending time on social media is like, it's literally just killing time, spending time, which I don't think killing time is a way to live. It's not meaningful. It's like playing video games. Like people play video games just to kill time, just to spend time. And like, it's a very neutral thing. Like, it's not a bad experience. Like, playing video games on social media. Social media can be a bad experience, but for the most part, I don't think it is. It's not like a bad thing. But it's not like a really happy, good thing either. It's not like this really meaningful experience that we'll remember for a lifetime. So it's pretty much like investing your time in video games and social media. It's like this admission of just killing time and saying, I have nothing better to do. I have nothing more meaningful to do right now.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a very interesting perspective. I have one last question for you, and that is, I would love to know a little bit about how you were able to get some of the guests that you did on your show.
Yeah.
You're so young, but yet you were able, like, you have a really great sort of like list of people that I hope people go and check out. Talk a little bit about that, because it's scary to go out and kind of, just ask anyone.
Yeah, sure. The email game is strong with this one over here, Saba. So it's in my, I actually give away all my initial cold outreach templates and follow-up emails and contingency plan in my new book, the Podcast Playbook. And I think it's really going to help a lot of people.
That is fantastic. Okay, cool. I hope people check it out and go there. If people want to learn more from you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Hey, jordanparis.com. And I hope you'll give Growth Mindset University a listen.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Jordan, thank you so much for being here today. This was such a fun conversation.
Appreciate you.
Now, if a podcast is something that you've thought about doing but don't know where to begin, don't forget to check out Jordan's latest book. You can find it on his website, jordanparis.com, and obviously I will link all of the resources and information in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Knowing what brings you here and hearing from you guys about what resonated and what specific ideas you enjoyed really helps me design and deliver episodes that are going to be of value to you week after week. I really encourage you to reach out to both me and to Jordan. Trust me when I say it absolutely makes someone's day when you can tell them what you've enjoyed about what they've shared, not to mention the influence it can have on your career and how you go about designing your life by building your network. Leaving a review for the podcast also helps others learn about the show, giving them the gift of knowledge and allowing this community, and more specifically you, creating access to exposure to ideas and opportunities that others may not even know exist. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I'll see you again next week. It's your turn to join the conversation by sharing what you enjoyed or what questions you still have. In a world where time and attention are so valuable, thank you for choosing to listen and for being a part of our Sprint to Success with Design Thinking community.